I would love for Cat Friendly to sponsor us.
All right, we are now recording. So we got some news today. Boy, oh boy, do we have some news.
Today is Monday night here on Hockeytown University. We have some exciting news. We have a trade to report. We have found out about an hour ago that Bo Horvat has indeed been traded, and that has been to...
It's not the Bruins, not the Wings, not the Avs. Who is it, Zach?
the New York Islanders. Out of all teams,
Just as everyone predicted.
It just blows my mind. Like, you had the Avs, the Wings, who else that you named off? New Jersey.
Bruins, that's pretty much where it ends. I didn't hear about anyone else besides those three teams.
I even heard New Jersey a little bit in there, but I think that their fans are a little more in the Timo Meier sweepstakes, considering that they already have a Hughes and a Nico Hischier for their top two Cs, so They're good in that department. But yeah, what a trade for the New York Islanders. The New York Islanders acquired Bo Horvat, $5.5 million in exchange for Anthony Beauvillier, Atu Ratu, and a 2023 first-round conditional pick, which belongs to the New York Islanders. The conditions on this pick, obviously. The pick becomes an unprotected 2024 first-round pick if it is in the top 12, which... if you look at the standings right now, and I'll even go to the wild card to look at it.
I think they are 12th.
The Islanders are fourth in the wild card, 1 point behind Buffalo, 2 points behind Pittsburgh, and then 3 behind Washington. So both Washington and Pittsburgh are in the same division. So that's ultimately why they made this trade, right? Is because they're so close in that wild card spot that getting that current 30 goal scorer right now was very important for them heading into the All-Star break, getting that connection ready for Bo Horvat and his new line mates to then take on the next half of the season. And they only got 34 games left, actually. Wow, they played a lot of games, and the Red Wings have only played 48. So that just is pretty crazy. But you look at the league in general and where they are in the standings, and they're 19th overall. So it makes sense why the Islanders did it. They haven't exactly been a goal-scoring team, as we've kind of learned over the years. So it makes sense that they went out and got this guy who is a pure scoring center.
Yeah.
And that's something that can complement with Matt Barzal pretty well. And that's an interesting topic to go into as well, where they're going to put Matt Barzal, because that's obviously their top center. I don't know where they're going to put Bo Horvat, but I don't think that they're going to be sweating on either one of those, where those two are going to be interchangeable.
Yeah, so I think I just looked at it. They're 25th in scoring in the league. So obviously that's not ideal. And if you want to push to the playoffs, you're going to need to bump those numbers up a little bit. I think in terms of centers and the order of them, I would probably lean towards Barzal staying the first center, mostly just because of the money they have tied up in him and how long he's been there, his tenure, how much they know his game and trust him. And I mean, Horvat will fit right in the second line center role. I don't know what his line mates are going to be, but I think with him being the pure goal scorer that he is, he's going to settle in very comfortably in that 2C role.
Sorry, I was looking to see if maybe Daily Faceoff had the changes made, but I am not seeing the updates here on either rosters, where they don't have Bo Horvat on either roster.
It's probably still updating. This is
I wonder if they're making
very recent trade.
Oh no, they put Bo Horvat onto the Islanders, so they put.
All right.
Here's where. Now this is from Daily Faceoff. Josh Bailey, Bo Horvat, Matt Barzal for your top line. Then you got Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, and Kyle Palmieri as your second line. I like that they put Matt Barzal off to the wing, but I do see a reality where they might end up putting Barzal back at center, whether that's 1 or 2 seat. But I agree with you that, I don't think that you can go wrong with either one, but I would probably put Matt Barzal in that top C spot because that is his spot technically. You didn't go out there and get a Bo Horvat to replace Matt Barzal because Matt Barzal already knows how to do his job quite well, to be honest with you. So I think it could go Barzal, Horvat, but like I said, I think you can go either way and you don't have a wrong answer in that regard.
Yeah, Barzal to the wing, that is a very interesting decision to me, and I feel like that is not going to stay permanent for very long. We all know what Barzal's game is. He is a playmaker first, and then he'll shoot second. And I think having him as a first-line center and generating offense for that line, then having Bo Horvat right behind him, and he's the pure goal scorer of that line, that seems like the best way to arrange it to me.
Yeah, and that goes back to the topic, right? That they don't have very much scoring outside of Matt Barzal. I mean, you could even go ahead and take a look at their team and just what they've put together.
I don't really need to. No, they don't have much else.
Yeah, I mean, their leading goal scorers right now are Brock Nelson and Anders Lee, who both had 19 goals so far in the season. And Brock Nelson is actually their leading point getter so far this season with 46 points in 52 games. So
yeah, he's quietly had a very good year.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy who's 31, yeah, that's a pretty decent year. I mean, considering that he only had 59 points in 72 last year, and he's on pace for 73 and 82 this season, that's a huge up boost in production for a guy who is, like I said, 31 years old, so not exactly in his prime. He's definitely in the more exiting of that type of deal. But I want to talk more about this trade and what exactly went into this and what Vancouver is getting for a Bo Horvat in return. Now, like I said, you're getting an Anthony Beauvillier who is 25 currently. His birthday is June 8th, so he'll be 26 this year. He just signed his contract, which holds a 4.15 cap hit. It was a 3-year deal signed last year. And this is a guy who has a career of 457 games played with 209 points total, 100 goals, just over 100 goals and 107 assists. He's eclipsed 20 goals once. That was back in 2017-18. So pretty far away from the last time that he's put in 20 goals. But ever since then, he's just barely been under it. But he's never gotten more than 39 points. He's never hit the 40 points mark. And granted, he is only 25, about to be 26. But this is his 7th season. And if this is what you're replacing Bo Horvat with,
it's a pretty good upgrade.
Yeah, to say it lately, I mean, that is a pretty good upgrade. But no, I mean, like, that's kind of like you did a complete 180, right? But I mean, Beauvillier comes from a team that is well known to be a very defensive first team. And that is something that Vancouver has been lacking very, very much in the last couple of years, and probably forever, if you want to say forever, because that franchise is a whole different story that we can talk about in a later episode. But
I'd say since at least 2010 when they went to the finals.
Yeah, it's been
feels like forever.
Been pretty interesting for him. And then going into the other piece that went into this is Atu Ratu, who, for some of you who do not know, he was the 2nd round pick, 52nd overall, and that was actually the Red Wings pick that they traded away to acquire Nick Leddy. So technically speaking, this should be the Red Wings pick, but this was the pick that the Red Wings
Well, it's interesting you say that because he was available when they picked in the 2nd round, and I can't remember who they picked in lieu of him, but he was definitely available, and he was one of the guys where we were talking about before that draft. I can remember that he was looking to be a late 1st round pick, and he fell all the way to the middle of the 2nd. So he's a very promising young player. I just looked up his stats. He's got, let me double check actually. I don't know the details. Let's see what good old Elite Prospects has to say about him.
So basically what I was trying to say is that I remember that we traded or Nick Leddy from the Islanders, and we gave them. Yes, it wasn't the Red Wings second overall or second round pick. It was originally Edmonton's pick that we had given to them in 2021. So last year or 2 drafts ago. So 2 drafts ago is when they acquired Atu Ratu. And then you look at his stats, and yeah, like you said,
He's
at one
stud.
point he was the number one guy in the 2021 draft, where he was the guy that was supposed to go first overall. And then you enter into that draft year. I don't know what happened, but he just had a down year, did not look like he belonged in the Liga playing over in Finland. And for whatever reason, that dropped him all the way down. But I do remember leading up to that draft that there was a size concern as well. Now we know how this story plays out, right? So we got plenty of other comparables that we can bring that on to. But yeah, he in the Liga, the year that he was drafted, before his draft, he played 35 games and put up 6 points. But the year before that, he played in 12 games and put up 4 points. So there was hope for him there as a 16, 17-year-old playing in a men's league. And then that next year just didn't put up. And then once he got drafted, he played in Liga again. He had a turn it around year. Some would say an all-star season for a really young guy who was just turning 18, 19 years old. He put up 40 points in 41 games and, played a couple games in the AHL. Then this year he comes over and plays in the AHL for 27 games, puts up 15 points, plays 12 games with the Islanders. And for someone who was drafted for center positions, and that's something that the Red Wings truly lack, and we got someone, I don't really remember who the Red Wings drafted in the second round for that year, but for a team that has been known that we need more center depth, can we consider this a miss by Yzerman and co?
I don't really want to go to that angle. I just want to say, in regards to the trade, people might be thinking that the first this year is the big piece in this, and they'd probably be right to think that, although it is protected. But, this Ratu kid, I would not be shocked if we're sitting here 2 to 3 years from now, and this kid is the top 6 center in the NHL, especially in Vancouver, where they don't really have a whole lot to look forward to as far as young talent goes. This trade is very interesting to me because it came out whenever Rutherford had that press conference. It was about a month ago, I think. I don't exactly remember when it's happening, but he did lay out specifically what he was looking for, and it was players coming off an ELC, a top prospect, and a right shot D. So he didn't really get any of that. He did get a top pick and a top prospect. There's no right D going in this trade. There's no player coming off an ELC. Beauvillier is still fairly young. At 25 years old, this is kind of just what he is at this point. He doesn't have much of a ceiling left anymore. But yeah, this is a lot different than what I thought this trade would look like. Not even just from the destination. Nobody thought he'd go to the Islanders, but it's a little surprising in what they gave up to get him.
I think, you're right. That isn't exactly what we all heard, what the return was that they were asking for. Now, mind you, there's other things that played a role into that. One, Vancouver's front office just cannot keep their mouths quiet. Had they kept their mouths quiet, they probably could have gotten a lot more. Not saying that what they got wasn't a good trade. To be honest with you, in my own personal opinion, I personally believe that the Vancouver Canucks won this trade. I do not believe that the Islanders won this trade. I think Vancouver got, like I said, the scoring wasn't their problem, and they were willing to part ways with Bo Horvat because you also have Pettersson, you have help me out here.
What, as far as centers go?
No, just on their team in general.
Well, they have Pettersson, they have Hughes. They still have Besser, but you can say what you want about him. But he's still a young, promising forward.
So on their team, they have Elias Peterson, they have Brock Bozer, they have JT Miller, Connor Garland. Now they have Anthony Beauvillier. They have Andrei Kuzmenko, who just signed that contract for 2 years, 5.5. They have the Quinn Hughes, so everything's starting to turn around for them. And then you look at the players that they have on injured reserve too. They have the Patrick Demko, they have the Ilya Mikheyev, the Tanner Pearson. So they have some good players. So they're not, to me personally, you're not the main piece in this trade to me is that first pick. Well, like you said, they didn't get that right shooting defenseman, but they did get that player, that top prospect that is coming off that EL or that is on the ELC, which is Ratu, where you can put Ratu starting in as your third line center. Beauvillier is going to be your 2C, and then you can put Elias Peterson back at your 1C if you really wanted to, if that's how you want to go. Or JT Miller, whoever you want. Make the $8 million man for another 8 years do be your 2C or your 1C. I don't really care what you do. That's not my team to pick parts on. But, I do feel like that the Vancouver won this trade because of the fact that not only did you get Ratu and you got two centermen, and then you got, or I'm sorry, Beauvillier is not a center, but you got a center, and then you got that prospect that could be, or that draft pick that could be the right-handed shooting defenseman that you might be looking for. Especially if it's just not top 12 protected. If somehow they fall in the 13, there's probably a right-handed prospect that's in there. Or since Vancouver is in the field where they don't want to rebuild and they don't feel like waiting, they can flip that pick to go out and get that right-handed shooting defenseman that they want. Now that they have 2 first-round picks in 2023, I could see that happening all day. But that could also be another topic for a later episode that we could talk about. But yeah, that's my thought on it. I really do think that is really the piece. It's not the fact that they didn't get what they wanted. I think they got that, but in a different way than we all were expecting, right? Because like I said, they could use some of these pieces to switch them around and get something else that they might want. They could still come after Philip Hronek from the Red Wings if they want that right-handed
D. Don't touch our boy.
Give us that 2023 first-round pick that you just got from the Islanders. We'll gladly take that and watch them go to 13th.
So with this trade and the trade destination, it's a little puzzling to me, because if you would have asked me a week ago what direction are the Islanders going in, are they going to push for the playoffs or blow it up and try for Bedard, I would have said the latter. Because even though they're not that far away, this is a team who they really struggled this year. Not only just with scoring, but, I don't know. I feel like if you're doing this kind of trade, you're saying, okay, let's go all in and make a playoff push. When, Bo Horvat helps with goal scoring, don't get me wrong, but they're really still not there yet, in my opinion. They need to add another scoring winger to possibly play with him. And, Meyer's still out there. Who knows? I don't know how much more the Islanders are willing to part with, but they could go out and get someone. Yeah, it's very puzzling to me that this is the team that traded for him, which I kind of like that because that's a wild card, and I love chaos in the NHL. But, yeah, losing a first-round pick, even though it's protected this year, this is a very deep draft. There's a lot of high-end talent in the first round, not only in the top half, but you could potentially get something in the bottom half of the first round, too. This is one of the deepest first rounds we've seen in a long time, probably since the McDavid-Eichel draft. So, yeah, it's nice that it's protected. It's a good thing they didn't make the same mistake as Florida, and they protected it. I wouldn't be shocked if this pick ends up at 13 or 14, and they get, I don't know, take your pick, Oliver Moore, Sandin Pellikka. All of those have high ceilings. So, I don't know. I think we'll have to wait and see how this plays out to really determine a winner. I think right now I would lean more towards Vancouver, mostly just for Ratu. I'm so high on Ratu, it's not even funny. He's going to be like my biggest what if for the Red Wings if they would have picked him, because I know he's going to be a star. But I think we can move on from that and we can go to our mid-season rankings for the Red Wings.
And this is where you'll have to cut the video, because this is where we take our 5-minute break, and we can kind of just, if you got to take like a piss break or something, you don't have to stop recording or anything. Like, you can keep recording, but like, we're gonna have to cut this out because like I want to hit my vape. Probably shouldn't have that on YouTube.
All right, fair enough. No, that's fine.
So if you got to piss or whatnot, but yeah. So like I'll no, I thought that was good. Yeah, there's not. We could go on with this one for hours, but yeah, overall, long term, I do believe that Vancouver won this. I do think that Ratu can be. I mean, Ratu could be the Anthony Beauvillier. He really could be.
No, he'll be better than Anthony Beauvillier, man. I'm telling you. Just from like what I've seen from him, I've watched a little bit of his highlights. I don't remember what year it was from. I don't think it was from last year when he was in the league and was a point per game player. It might have been his draft year. I don't remember what I watched, but I mean, you can just tell that kid has like, he's got something special. Like he's got that scoring touch. He's a super, super smart player, great playmaker. I don't know, man. And I'll tell you something else that's funny. So this is pretty funny. So I got back from getting dinner today, and I said to my dad, I was like, "Hey, Dad, congratulations." He says, "Why? What are you congratulating me for?" And I said, "The Islanders, they got Bo Horvat." You want to know what his first reaction was? Who? And then he started to think about it. He was like, "Oh yeah, that guy plays in Vancouver, right?" I was like, "Yeah, he's a 30-goal scorer. He's their captain. Yeah, it's a pretty fucking big trade. Pretty big trade." And I told him that they gave up Ratu, and he winced a little. He was like, "Oh, I don't think I like that. Ratu's super promising. I like him." And then he called my uncle, who still lives out in Long Island, and I talked to him, and I told him the trade, and he goes, "Oh, I would have been fine if it was just Beauvillier in the first. Beauvillier sucks. They gave up Ratu. Oh man." So, the general consensus, that's two Islanders fans, right? They're lifelong fans who have, they've been there for the cup runs in the 80s. And if they're having that reaction for Ratu being gone, I think it's safe to say that was the biggest piece in the trade that is not named Bo Horvat.
Yeah, and that's why I think that overall Vancouver won, is because long term you look at it and it's the same thing that I would say for the Red Wings. You look at the trades that the Red Wings make, and the long term, short term, it does kind of suck that Vancouver's losing that 30-goal scorer. But in 5 years, it's going to change, right? Because the Islanders are sacrificing future for now, where Vancouver's doing the opposite, kind of like, right? Where they're still kind of like, they got younger, and they got a piece to replace Horvat, a lesser Horvat, but they also gained a pick and two young players on top of that. So
yeah, and I think Beauvillier, honestly, he kind of reminds me of like if we did this trade, I feel like Beauvillier in our scenario would be like a Zadina who just needs a change of scenery, and if he has a different scenario around him and he has a different team to play with, there might actually still be something there, and he could do something special.
So then you got to think that makes sense that they got the reclamation project, because this is what they asked for, right? Was the reclamation project?
They did ask for that too.
For the prospect, and then they got a draft pick. So they got what they asked for in reality. And like I said, I think that draft pick, they could use that to draft a right D, or they could just go out and get whatever they want. I mean, if that, like you said, if that pick,
what's available in the draft.
Yeah, if that pick ends up being like 13 to 15 range, that's a win for them. Even if it is protected, if the Islanders do fall in the under 12, then they get the 2024 pick, and that's not protected. Imagine if the Isles end up sucking then, dude. Like, and that's very possible too. That's the scary thing, is that Islanders are very much playing, and that's the thing too, is that
there's a lot of risk involved.
We haven't even heard if. Are you recording still?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm just gonna cut all this out.
All right, so more to come on that, But one thing I do want to add is that one key importance with this trade is that Bo Horvat has not signed that extension. So I have to ask, do you think that Bo Horvat, if he does not sign this extension, will he stay with the Islanders after this season?
Well, so one thing I want to say on that is I don't think the Isles would have gone through and done this trade if they weren't expecting him to sign long term. I would expect him to sign, but if they just have him for this year and they miss the playoffs and he walks in free agency, what a massive failure of a trade this is. That'll leave a lot of Islanders fans and just NHL fans in general scratching their head and wondering why this trade ever went down.
And to think that the Islanders only have just a little over 16 mil to spend in their cap for next season with only 15 players added to the roster, and that's not including Bo Horvat. So they definitely have some work cut out for them. I really don't know what they're going to do, but more to come on that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in on the midseason reviews on our Red Wings, eh? Let's talk mainly about the standings to start. 23rd overall with 50 points, 21 wins, 19 losses, 8 overtime losses in 48 games. They're sitting 23rd overall in the standings, like I said. And then the wild card, they're 7th, just 1 point above Ottawa, 1 point behind Philadelphia. And ultimately just 7 points back from a wild card spot. Granted, that is only 3.5 games, if that's how you want to count it as, but there's still plenty of time. But there's still plenty of time for the Red Wings to keep not doing what we expected them to be doing when we were getting ready for the season to start. I mean, we had some pretty high hopes with the players that we brought in, young players we thought that could do better than last season, a la Raymond and Seider. So let's go ahead and start talking about some of the players, mainly Dylan Larkin, who seems to be a topic of conversation lately for not only just Red Wings fans, but in the hockey community about when's this extension going to come? Is he going to get traded? What's going to happen with him? And I'll direct that over to you. Tell me what you think about Larkin. What do you think of his season so far? Being halfway point right now with 48 games played. Do you expect an extension to come? Is that going to be before this All-Star break that happens this Saturday? Is it going to be after, during? What are your thoughts on Larkin so far this season?
Well, so I think there is going to be an extension coming. I don't really know if it's going to come as soon as before the All-Star break, but I would think that it'll come before the trade deadline because, let's face it, that's pretty much when it has to happen before the city of Detroit goes into a full panic and starts burning to the ground. Um, as far as signing him, I mean, we've had countless debates on what his earnings should be, what his terms should be. We know what he and his camp wants. He wants 9 million, at least close to 9 million, maybe even north of that. Yzerman has got as close, I think, as 8.5. I'm not sure on the details. I think there will be an extension, and I unfortunately think he's going to be a little bit overpaid, and I'll tell you why. So, a lot of the arguments have been that he needs to be paid as a top 15, top 20 center. You go out and you look at the market and you see what those guys are making. That's all well and good. The thing that makes this situation a little bit more different, a little more complicated is you're not just paying him like a top 15, 20 center. You're paying him as the most important player on the team. You're paying him as the captain of the team. He happens to be both those things. I think if you're paying him like that, you're probably going to need to settle on at least 9 million a year. Just you can't lose a player of that caliber for nothing in free agency. You can trade him, but it's whatever you're going to get, it's not going to replace what he offers to the team. I don't know. I think whatever happens outside of signing him, it'll set the rebuild back. The only question is how long it'll be. So that would be the number one priority, is to get him signed. He's the one guy outside of Raymond and Seider you can't lose. I mean, look at what this trade that we had today. The trade for Larkin is going to be pretty similar, which that's kind of scary because I would want more if I was trading Larkin for the exact return that Horvat got. Like, imagine that imagine that Larkin was traded to Islanders. We got Beauvillier, a first, and now Ratu. I would be driving to Steve Yzerman's house and slapping him in the face. I'd be like, why did you do this? He needs to be signed. If he's not signed, full on panic mode.
Yeah, majority of that, I agree with you. And it's funny what I'm about to bring up, and it's, we just recently got done talking about the Islanders, and a good comparison for that would be Matt Barzal with Larkin, because Matt Barzal just signed his $9.15 million extension for 8 years that activates next season, and someone like him, he has put up 354 points in 413 games, and Larkin is just north of 550 games with 51, and he has 400 points, and he's just a couple years older than Matt Barzal is, just by a year, actually. So that's probably the best comparable, with them both being the top centers of their teams. And then you look around the league, the other players that are paid $9 million as a center, you're talking about Nick Backstrom. You're talking about Sidney Crosby making 8.7, Zibanejad, Forsberg, Stamkos, Draisaitl, Hurdle, Couture, and then you're getting into the Duchesnes, Johansson, and then Jack Hughes is another one. And he just turned, I don't even know if he's 21 years old yet, and he's already slated to make $8 million a year, and that's a steal for a New Jersey Devils team.
Yeah, Jack Hughes is the perfect example.
Going on to your point is that we shouldn't have to overpay for Larkin because he is truly our 1C, but we have to pay him because he is our 1C. And because you're right, we don't have, if we were to do what Vancouver just did with Bo Horvat, where, mind you, they have a JT Miller, they have an Elias Peterson that could replace to play that 1C, where we have an Andrew Kopp, a Michael Rasmussen, a Joe Veleno. So we don't really have exactly that type of luxury to ship off Larkin and expect everything to still be the same. He truly is the backbone of this team, and we can look back on recent years where, and even this season, where Larkin's missed a couple games and the team just does not look like it belongs in the NHL, to be honest with you. Like, Larkin is the main fixture of this team, and I agree with you in that sense that if you don't trade him, or if you trade him or you don't re-sign him, you're pushing that rebuild back. It just ultimately destroys the team, and you can sit there until you're blue in the face telling me that Marco Kasper can be that difference maker, but I don't think that he can be the difference maker on a Larkin level. Well, Larkin and Kasper can be a great 1-2, but I don't think it could just be a Kasper and Kopp type of deal.
The worst thing that you can do with Kasper is you can bring him in next year and say to him, all right, kid, you got to play 2C or 1C because we don't have Larkin, and if you can't do that, we're screwed. If you tell him to do that, that's the best way to ruin him.
And that's kind of the situation that I don't want to start putting our young players in, and that was something that us Detroit fans were calling in the 1920 season, is like, we knew that we were doing so bad, why aren't we calling up these young players to come play? And we look back at some of these players that we've drafted, and granted, they haven't turned out the way that we wanted them to, but like, you look at that Dennis Cholowski, you could even make the case for Michael Rasmussen being drafted where he was. He didn't really own up to his draft spot. Philip Zadina. Evgeny Svechnikov, that's another player too. I mean, you can't, it's easy to say, go out there, do bad, get the best player available, and then just bring them up and play. It's easy to say that, but it's not easy for those players at such a young age who haven't played in men's leagues before and don't really know what that's like. I mean, 82 games, there's no other league that plays 82 games. against full-grown men that are in their late 20s, early 30s, that are 6'4" beasts at 200 pounds. You're not going to get that in the WHL. You're not going to get that in the Liga. I mean, you might be able to, but like, you know what I mean? So it's just, yes, Larkin is the main source of this team. He is the bread and butter. Letting him go would be a mistake. It would be setting everything back. And if I were Yzerman, I don't think the extension will come before the All-Star break. Would I want it to? Yes, of course. I want this to get done as soon as possible. Now, if the rumors are true where they're just trying to figure out between the middle apart where it's Yzerman's 8 and Larkin's more 9, at this point, just do whatever you got to do to get it done because it sounds like it is going to get done. That's not what I'm nervous about. But I don't want the situation where it's Steven Stamkos all over again because that was a whole different scenario where we don't have the same luxury as they did, much Vancouver does now, where if we let a Steven Stamkos go a la Larkin, we don't have someone to replace him with. We don't have Nikita Kucherov. We don't have all the Victor Hedmans. We don't have those. Yes, we have a Raymond. We have a Sider, but they're not there yet. And that would be unfair to them as well by taking away Larkin. And if you give away Larkin, you might as well get rid of all these other players too that you just signed. Because what was it all for? And that's something else I want to touch upon. But ultimately, going into Larkin, I don't think that he's going to sign here soon. I don't think it could be as soon as after the All-Star break. Maybe Larkin just needed to clear his head, have some fun, have a good weekend, and then come back and be like, you know what, Yzerman? I thought about it. I will sign that 8.75. I will sign that 8.5. I will sign that 8. Whatever it is, I will be happy, and I think all the fan base will be happy. But I agree with you also that if it does not get done by trade deadline, that a lot of fans will start to get a little nervous that
we'd be screwed if it doesn't happen by then.
Yeah, and there's already a little rumblings here and there that some fans are panicking that he might not want to be here, but let's not go into that discussion. We can talk about that also a different episode, but
so I also want to touch on the fact that I think in this salary negotiation, I understand that Yzerman wants to get the best value he possibly can for his players.